Hi, I'm Mr. Simons, and in this video we're going to be looking at inventory management. So if we think about it here, when we talk about inventory, that you might also hear referred to as stock. And the kind of things we're looking at are the amount of raw materials, work in progress, and finished goods. So if we look at work in progress, we can break that down a little bit. So we can look there at intermediate goods, they're kind of there, but not quite finished. And it's all about what the business has on hand at a point in time. So that is really kind of the focus in terms of what we're talking about with inventory or stock. If we think about holding inventory, that it's kind of a tricky situation, right? So the business must hold enough stock to meet demand, but it shouldn't hold too much stock. So if we're thinking about why this kind of issue occurs, that what we can think about is, well, too much inventory, well, that's going to increase storage costs. We have to hold all this stock somewhere. If we think about it from the other perspective, if we have too little stock, lost sales, and then potentially damage the business's reputation, right? Because every time someone comes to the store here, that they will just see this big sign and they won't be able to get the good they want. So it's kind of like meeting this balance or managing this balance between the costs of holding stock and the benefits of having enough stock on deck for when people come through and want to buy something. So if we look here, let's start over here. Why is it a problem to hold stock? Okay, so one, we've got the costs. So we've got storage costs, insurance costs, protection against theft or theft costs in terms of people actually stealing it, and then handling costs, so being able to move the stock between different places in terms of even going further and managing the movement of goods. So the other thing is that if we are looking at stock and managing stock, that is taking resources away from other functions. So when we manage stock and hold stock, we have to use labor, we use time, we use capital. And that these things then, that those resources can't be deployed elsewhere, that they're focused on stock. The other thing is this idea of obsolete stock, and obsolete here just means it's out of date, or even better, it's been superseded by something else. And that's a problem because you've got all of this stock sitting around and you know that no one really wants it. If we look at the advantages, so here the pros of holding stock, that it's just such an important thing here. You can quickly meet consumer demand. You're not going to lose sales. And you're reducing that time between order and delivery, which can also increase consumer satisfaction. The other thing is the business can generate immediate revenue because if you have stock, you sell it, cash comes in. If we have stock, well, we can reduce some of that stock we hold to boost cash flow. The problem is, though, is that maybe that older stock might actually be obsolete and that there's reduced demand for it because there is new stock. Okay, so what we're looking at now are inventory valuation methods. So we're thinking about, okay, what's the value of unsold stock and what's the value of stock that we've already sold? So we're looking at those two things. So let's just make that a little bit clearer. So what we're saying is, okay, what is the value of unsold stock and what is the value of stock we've also sold? The important thing to think about here is that the value of stock will vary depending on which method is used. So let's come down a little bit here. So what we're going to do is we'll start with LIFO, which means last in, first out. So what we're saying is that the stock purchased most recently, so in other words, the newest stock is sold first. So it may seem a bit weird because why wouldn't you sell the older stuff first? So what we're talking about is we've got goods that have no use by date. They're not perishable. They're not going to expire. So what we can do is that if we're looking at last in, first out, what we're doing is we are quickly getting the newest products to the customer. The other option we can talk about is called first in, first out. So what we're saying is by first in, we're talking about the oldest product. So can you see here we were talking about the newest. Here we're saying the oldest stuff, okay, that will be that's going to be sold first. The first stock, I don't know if I like that expression, but we can say here rather than first stock, we could say, okay, well, that's the oldest stock. The oldest inventory is sold first, right? So this is very suitable to perishable items such as food and drink that you might want to think here about something like fresh milk. That what we're saying is that, well, the oldest milk, we should sell that first before it expires. Then we will sell the newest milk. That we're kind of working with the expiry dates. Okay, so we've got an example here that we're going to work our way through. Let's try purple. That I've taken this from Capterra on YouTube. I've modified it slightly, but I want to give credit where credit is due. Link is into the original video is in the description. So I'm not passing this off as my own. I think it's a very good example. I've just changed it slightly to make it a bit different for our purposes. So if we're looking at this example, you can see here that we've got 3 weeks. And in week 1, this business buys 100 pens at 5 cents a pen. So the total here is that it spends $5. Second week buys another 100 pens, but the price has gone up. Maybe plastic is in more demand. Maybe everyone wants pens because of some consumer trend. Ink is more expensive. Price has gone up. So now it's $15 to buy 100 pens. And the third week, we're seeing more of the cost going up. So now it's $20 to buy 100 pens. So if we look at it, at the end of week 3, the business has an inventory of 300 pens. And then this is valued at, okay, well, the first 100 cost us 5, the next 100 cost us 15, and the next cost us 20. So what we've got here is that the value of inventory is $40. Now things shift slightly. In week 4, the business sells 200 pens at $1 a pen, earning revenue, but not profit, see a separate video, of $200. So what we're saying in week 4, okay, so the business earns $200 in revenue. Couple of things we were going to focus on. So let's just grab a highlighter here. So what happens is that we know that the business sells 200 pens. But the question here for us is that which 200 pens does it sell? Does it sell these two, a little bit here, a little bit here? How does that actually work? So let's think about it in terms of FIFO, first in, first out. So this is where we are selling the oldest products first. So this is really good for perishable stuff. This is that milk, fresh milk example. That's what we would put here. So if we talk about the oldest first and we're selling 200 pens, we'd say, okay, so the business sells, we don't need dollar. So the first 100 pens are sold and they cost 5 cents each. So that's $5, right? So in terms of that, we're sort of looking here at what is the cost of the goods sold. So, and we are starting FIFO, okay, so we go the oldest ones first. Then we're going to sell the next oldest. So the business will sell another 100 pens and it will sell them we'll buy another 100 pens at 15 cents each, which gives us $15 in terms of this. So if we look at the last situation, well, we don't need that last situation because if we look here, we've now bought 200 pens and the cost of goods sold, that's $20. And also, if you think about it, what have we got left? What is left in the inventory? Well, we haven't sold those ones from week 3. So what is left is 100 pens that we bought for 20 cents each equals $20. So the cost or the value of the inventory left over is $20. The cost of goods sold is $20. So let's have a look at the profit we would make. So we would say, okay, so profit. So we know here that the revenue is $200. So we're just picking this up and putting it right here. So, okay, so that's $200. The cost of goods sold, well, that's $20. So the profit under this method is $180. So what we are doing with LIFO is we're talking about, okay, so the last in, first out. So the newest goods are sold first. So if we think about it, what we would do is we would start here, let's call that A, then we would go here, and then if we need, we would go C. And remember the red letters, that is all about LIFO. The newest is sold first. So let's look at the cost of goods sold again. So the first 100 pens that I will sell to the market, they cost me 20 cents because I'm selling the newest first. So that's 20 bucks. And here, just remind ourselves we're doing COGS. The next thing, okay, we're going to sell 100 and we bought those at 15 cents each. That's 15 bucks. So the cost of goods sold here is $35. So you can see my expenses are a bit higher here. And then I can look at what is the inventory left over. So I didn't sell C. So I said, okay, what's left? Well, C is left over. So what I did, I bought 100 pens at 5 cents equals 5 bucks. That's a zero. So then the inventory left over is valued at $5. So now I can do the same. We go profit, revenue, minus our costs here. Remember, revenue is the same. So this $200 in revenue, I will bring this up and plug it in here. So that's $200. And our costs here are 35. Just bringing that down here. And that then will equal a profit of 165. So we can see here that under FIFO, okay, our profit is 180. Under LIFO, our profit is different. The value of inventory left over is different, and also the costs of goods sold are different. Okay, so let's just finish off this video by summarizing what we've got. So if we look on this side, and let's just get black here, is if we start with last in, first out, that the stock purchased most recently is sold first. So that the newest stock is sold first. Now this is very helpful if we're not dealing with perishable items. If a good is perishable, you want to sell the oldest stock first before it expires. That's if it is perishable. If it's not perishable, you can sell the newest stuff. It doesn't really matter. So again, because it is not perishable, the newest stock is sold first. Here's something to think about, is that when we are considering the cost of goods sold, is that the newest stock, the stuff that is purchased most recently, could be most expensive because at the start of the year, maybe no one really wants the products, maybe you've locked in good deals, everything's great, but later in the year, maybe prices go up. So that what we can say is that this newest stock is actually most expensive. And then, well, the old stock, that is the cheapest because you bought that earlier in the year and maybe you locked things in for pretty good deals. And so that's pretty favorable. So what we say is if the newest stock is most expensive and that this is the stock we are selling, then COGS is going to be higher. The cost of goods sold is going to be higher. If COGS and expenses are going to be higher, well then profit is lower. Why is profit going to be lower? Because profit equals revenue minus costs. So if I think about what's going on there, if my costs increase, then my profit will fall. And we're saying here that COGS is higher. So profit will fall, which is just this demonstrated here. And then a lower profit, we're going to pay less tax because the companies are taxed on their profits. Lower profit, pay less tax. So that's the LIFO situation. If we move on to this side, FIFO, so first in, first out, the old stock, that's at the front of the shelf. The new stock is placed behind. So what we're talking about here is it's first in, first out. So the oldest stock is sold first. So this is very appropriate if we're talking about perishable goods with expiry dates. You want to sell the oldest stuff first so it doesn't expire and you waste it. So the oldest stock is sold first, the newest stock is sold second. So something to think about, just like we had on the other side, okay, newest stock can be most expensive because, later in the year, maybe demand has gone up. I locked in all my deals earlier. Now it's going to be more expensive. So if we take this a step further, the oldest stock is the cheapest, right? The oldest stock is the cheapest because I bought that earlier in the year. The newest stock, which is the remaining stock, the newest stock is the most expensive. So therefore, COGS is lower because the goods that are being sold, they were bought at the cheapest prices. That means that profit will be higher. And if I think about it here, it's just on the other side here. So I think, so profit, if profit equals revenue minus costs, and my costs here fall, then profit is going to be higher. And if profit is higher, that company's going to pay more tax. So it's very important that you can focus on what are the characteristics of a firm doing LIFO and what are the characteristics of a firm doing FIFO in terms of inventory management.